Well, for more then on this historic meeting, we're joined by Sarah de Nordwall from the Catholic Voices in the UK. Thanks very much for coming on to the programme. Good evening to you. An historic meeting then taking place as we speak. What do you think will come out of it?
Well, you know, the first thing that all Christians know, Russian Orthodox, Baptist, Catholic, is that unity carries a blessing. And it is in the spiritual realm that we can really have cause for hope. You know, John Paul II, he was working really hard for this meeting as well. He always said that, you know, the church needed to breathe with two lungs, east and west. And when that happened, the wealth of the churches would come together, the spiritual wealth, the prayer and fasting, and the beauty that inspires us in the Russian pilgrim tradition. In the Russian Orthodox Church, we've got to learn from that too. But also, he also calls St. Seraphim of Sarov a saint for us Catholics as well. And I've got his icon on my mantelpiece, and I have had that for years. And St. Seraphim said that the world could expect great things from the Russian soul. And he is a great Russian saint who still inspires us. And when these great traditions come together, something beautiful is definitely going to happen.
In general terms, it all sounds very good, Sarah, but in particular, is there anything specific you would expect to come out of this meeting? Anything sort of tangible and practical? Anything that would perhaps lead to developments?
Well, to be honest, in the Catholic Church and in the Russian Orthodox Church, the most practical thing there is the power of prayer. You know, when St. Seraphim of Sarov was attacked and had his back broken, he looked at his robbers and he called them brothers, and they all became monks. So when two people like these two great leaders meet in humility and unity, that inspires all believers to open their doors and to open their hearts. And when conflict is put an end to on the level of the heart, things do change. When people pray together, things are transformed. You know, Charles Péguy said that everything begins with mysticism and ends in politics. In the world, we often think that it's political leaders that make the difference. No, religious leaders inspire people to pray more. We have seen amazing things happen when people forgive each other. Amazing people in Syria, children in Syria, forgiving the people who've hurt them. Conversions are happening. And Pope Francis calls this an ecumenism of blood, which means that the churches have always grown stronger on the blood of the martyrs. Faith is always of the spiritual realm, but that has practical consequences of people working together to help refugees, working together to cooperate and not to hinder each other. And so in all the charitable works that the church does, this is also going to have a great effect as we cooperate and synergize our efforts to help refugees across the world and to pray together.
Sarah, do you think after the end of this meeting they will have a specific message for the refugee crisis and the violence in Syria?
Well, if people can come together who've been separated for 1,000 years with hostility, even though they believe the same things, more or less, this is a message that the world is changing. There is hope. You know, the Holy Father is on a mission to bring transformation in difficult situations that have brought warfare. He's asked, when he went to visit Raúl Castro, he asked for Cuba to be a place of encounter and therefore part of a journey of transformation and hope in the world. And that is exactly what's happening. And when you see these dots being joined, there can be no end to the transformations. When people come together in this way, we know that there's going to be a statement of intent that they're going to sign together. We don't know what's going to be in that statement yet, but you can be sure that they're going to be leaving difficulties behind and looking to work together concretely. And that can only be a good thing for all the churches and also for Muslims who suffer from the hostility that extremist elements are bringing sometimes into their community. All of us can work together to bring peace. You know, it's very practical. We saw monks, Russian Orthodox monks, during riots a year back, going into the streets and praying, and the riots calmed down. There's nothing impractical about people greeting each other in humility and praying, and it's up to all of us to respond. And the world changes when people pray and work together.
OK, and Sarah, we're running out of time slightly, but in terms of the timing of this meeting, we know that they've been in dialogue, you know, for a number of months too. Well, is there any significance to the timing of this meeting and why it's taken so long also? Can you offer an explanation?
Well, it wasn't until 1964 or 5 that Paul VI and Anathegoras lifted the anathemas that the Patriarch and the Pope had done against each other 1,000 years ago. Lots of theological difficulties. We had the Cold War as well. Pope John Paul II tried to reach out to Moscow, but he was a Pole who'd been under the Soviet, influence. That was a difficult time. Pope Benedict tried to reach out too, but now the persecution itself of Christians across the world is what's making the difference, I think. We're seeing people slaughtered, not because they're Baptists or Russian Orthodox or Catholics, but because they're Christians. This is a really urgent call. Christ prayed when he was alive that all may be one, and that is coming to pass today because of the urgency of the hour. Difficulties are also an opportunity, and these great leaders are coming together and saying this is a time for hope, not a time for despair, and that's why we're excited about it.
OK, Sarah, very interesting to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on to RT. That was Sarah de Nordwall.
Thank you very much.
From Catholic Voices. Thank you.
Thank you.